While we wait for our AV personnel, by AV I mean little name tag, and I'm going to stand up. So, hi, my name is Sumana Harihareswara, and I am the moderator and creator of the Imaginary Book Club. Thank you all for coming. Wow, that was like a soft yet pleasant year. There were two or three inspirations for this panel. One is the Goodreads panels that you've heard about happening at other cons, where basically everyone reads the same 5 books and then they just sort of review them. Oh, I gave my review, and then we all talk about it. Another was the Stanislaw Lem anthology, A Perfect Vacuum, which is an anthology of book reviews of imaginary books that Stanislaw Lem just came up with. And another is that at WisCon, my first WisCon, Ellen Kushner helped me get clothes at the clothing swap. And then Julia saw the fabric of it, and we were like, is it black? Is it gray? And she said, your velour top is material velour, color uncertain. Should we call that color Ellen Kushner gray? My immediate response was to come up with this blurb. Many works of speculative fiction shift raiments to the background of the story. Few put these crucial elements of world building where they should be, center stage. What clothes will wear us as we change our politics, our culture, our technology, and our way of life? What will be the fabric of our brave new lives? John Joseph Adams presents a new anthology, Material Velour, Color Unknown. What's inside that magic wardrobe? And therefore, I came up with the idea of this Imaginary Book Club. Each of us has come up with an imaginary book that we will present a review of, and then the rest of us will discuss it briefly, unfortunately, because there are 5 of us and because we've lost 8 minutes. But we don't know what each other's books are, other than them knowing this about me. So I'm going to be very surprised to find out what the 4 of these have come up with. So our 4 people here are Richard Chwedyk, Liza Furr, Klages, and Ben Rosenbaum. But instead of letting you introduce yourselves, I'm just going to steamroller you now to get on with the review of...
It will be very flat.
It's into the 2D world.
Exactly. So Material Velour, Color Unknown has a lot of great stories in it. I think it's a pretty well-balanced anthology because you get, some more sci-fi cyberpunk stuff like Bruce Sterling's Joseph and the Amazing Techno-Deterministic Dreamcoat. But you also get stuff that's more of like a magical realist vein. For example, you get Marianne Mohanraj's The Red Sari, which explores the issue of why on every single book of magical realism by an author like her, you see a red sari on the cover. And in her view, it has to do with the relationship between the reader, sex, and Indian American literature. So it ends with a plug for her nonprofit, which is a little odd, but it's metafictional. I really liked Joe Walton's story in it, but it was kind of weird that everything in it was blue. And then Ellen Kushner had a story that was great, but the color was kind of hard to categorize. I really like, and again, you get like a real diversity of kinds of stories in here. Like there was this one story by Tempest, or was it by Sparky Monster, or Kendra Gill? Actually, there was a really great story called Quilting the Other by Nisi Shaw, in which it was really more of a how-to, that in order to be like Nisi Shaw, you have to quilt a Nisi shawl. And I really appreciated that forthrightness in this, and we are living in a science fictional age, and you also got that sense from Ted Chiang's The Life Cycle of Software Objects, which was both about a loom and also the structure of the story was like a loom. Yeah, it was kind of. But I mean, obviously, there were some real high-powered people also in this anthology that you wouldn't have thought Adams could have gotten. But he has a reputation like this now. Like he got some photos in a sort of interstitial way from Ellen Klages of some portable child hoods. You had Kat Valente's redress, which unfortunately was kind of a retread of palimpsest. This dress just remade itself for each wearer. And if you ask me, it was kind of like Sisterhood of the Traveling A-Line. Honestly, like the thing that most people are going to buy this for is Neil Stephenson's High Fiber, which is about a fiber optic cable where these traveling geek knitting women take the strands and turn them into these sort of cyber headpieces. It's written, the women are so unrealistic in this one, just like all of Neil Stephenson. But the thing that we at WisCon are going to love it most for is Joanna Truss's When She Changed. Which I won't spoil, I'll just let you read for yourself. So, just briefly, I was wondering, since the rest of you also read this book, just in the next few minutes,
I always read anthologies by 3 named editors.
Oh, okay.
So John Joseph Adams anthologies I always read.
Gordon,
I also
yeah.
read Gardner Joseph Dozois' Best of the Year anthology, and John Joseph Hartwell, and Catherine Joseph Hartwell, with 4 names. And then I used to love the fantasy and horror anthologies from Boutros Dadlo.
Oh. Do you any of you have any thoughts?
Well, I think you didn't mention Hal Duncan's story, which is about it's sort of like the terribly transgressive act of wearing linen and cotton together, and how the punishments that the Old Testament God meets out, and the final pagan character who that was kind of one of my favorites, actually.
Well, and I'm surprised that you didn't mention the Le Guin story, The Fabric of Time. Because I thought, it's short, but it gets to the point, and the way that she wove the characters' lives together was.
Well, and 2 things. One, about Joe Walton's story with everything being blue. That's just a clear example of art imitating life. So, but my favorite story in there was Marissa Lingen's story, Waiting for Godot, where she's watching a friend knitting a baby blanket and waiting for her adoption to come through.
That was a lovely story.
Yeah, and there's a lot of real emotion in there.
Yeah, you're absolutely
See,
right.
I misread that as knitting for Godot, and it made no sense to me, but now.
Right.
Thank you. Do any of you have any other thoughts, or maybe we can move on to Ben's story?
Well,
Or
okay.
book, sorry.
I'm really excited about the new Small Beer Press reissue of the classics. It's a very little known in the English-speaking world, but it's the Small Beer title is the Prism Undreamt of, which is pretty accurate translation. So the original is I don't know how many people know, but the original is Le Prisme duquel on ne rêve pas, by Sebastian Melmoth, who is, of course, was what Oscar Wilde renamed himself after he got out of jail. So at the very end of his life, right after that, A Ballad of Reading Gaol,
Is it Gaul?
Gaol?
Jail?
Jail. Pronounce it jail?
No, you say Gaul!
So it was originally going to be a soccer story. But then anyway. Because there was a first draft before he got arrested. Anyway, but that.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But anyway, so after he wrote the Bad Jail, he was working on this. It was very. It was. He started it in Naples while he was living with Robert, his lover, when he got reunited with him. Then it ended just before his death in Paris. It was it's very it's really its early it's proto cyberpunk, you could almost argue. And interestingly, E.M. Forrester saw it in manuscript, and The Machine Stops is actually a response to Wilde's world. And in a way, I think of the two, I think Wilde's is superior because it's this very it is very interested in the technology of the time, and he so there and in social classes and so on. So in this kind of a dystopia where they have the workers are all hooked up, where they have cinematographs that they're watching, and they have small gramophones attached to their ears, and they're constantly being fed a string of entertainment to sort of anesthetize them. And the leisure classes are also wired into these things. And and there's a insurgent group of rebellious artists who are sort of want to subvert this, and they to overthrow the radicals there's sort of precedent to the surrealists. They're making these strange dream things. They're trying to, and they sort of hack into the system, as it were. Of course,
it's really surprising. It's not what you expect of Oscar Wilde.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, in a way, it is because the social satire. There's the farce, right. and the fact that the artists create these sort of. Some people think that Fritz Lang's Metropolis is actually based on the story, but although he ruined it, he butchered it because he took
Fritz
out.
Lang was sleeping with Oscar Wilde at one point.
Well, although he was 10, but yeah, but
Oscar liked it that way.
Anyway, but Fritz Lang takes all the evil industrial bureaucrat who sort of is the patsy villain in Metropolis. He had the good lines in Wilde's version. I mean, he was really almost the cynical hero. But these artists, they make all these revolutionary things, and they fail because it's simply the more transgressive they are, the more popular it is, and the more entertained the
It was sort of Lady Gaga at this time?
He was Lady Gaga at this time. So I think, but this, the other thing that's interesting about it is that this is actually the second English language translation of it, because it's well known in the French-speaking science fiction world. But I think part of the problem is that
we all heard about it in anticipation, right? Yeah.
But there was a translation it came out as an ace double in 1959, backed with Marooned on Epsilon 7, and it just kind of it didn't. I think it was the wrong the wrong. It's too early and people are slow anyway. So I'm excited that it's come out now, and it's a good translation.
Right.
Can I read an alternate title in the Ace Double?
Well, I think in the Ace Double, it picked up the title that was used when a translation appeared in an early issue of Amazing Stories when they were lifting stuff. It was then called Death Gods of the Plutosphere.
Right.
And the author was credited as being John Joseph Wilde.
Well, we know that Hugo Gernsback spoke no French, and so when he had to translate things, he just picked random words, figuring that nobody would know because French people are never going to read Amazing.
He found a German translation.
Done by Fritz Lang.
When he was 10.
He was 10. No, he was 10.
Who at the time spoke no English.
It was a really amazing feat, wouldn't you say? Yeah. Someone that talented, you can tell at an early age.
Yeah.
Well, any 10-year-old wearing a monocle always attracts attention.
Little Fritz is probably going to go very far.
I want you to stand over there.
No.
Right now, and I want you to look up at the big furnace as if it is a giant god, the Mammon. Yes.
I think we now have the name for the color of the velour. It's Dorian Gray.
So Benjamin, I know it sounds like you were a big fan of this work. What would you say were its flaws, though?
Well, I think it's I think there's a big shift in tone because it starts out very. It's not clear what he is. I think it's a big ambiguity where he's going with it because it starts out very, there's an element of almost utopian, sort of Oscar Wilde thinks that in a way it would be quite fun to be sitting around watching movies all day. It's kind of an absurd vision of an unrealistic notion that people in the future would spend all their time sitting in front of some kind of screen and while they were supposed to be doing work, entertaining themselves with movies that other people had made, in some.
Right, trading imaginary vegetables.
Trading, so that's it's a little bit straining credibility of.
Right. You get a small sense of this in the importance of being earnest. With the cucumber sandwiches.
Well, they figure prominently in the versions.
Yeah, it's a real prefiguring, really. Yeah. They're like direct sequels, really.
Well, it's no coincidence that it is Fong V that they play online. Another bad translation from the French.
Well, nobody has brought up what I thought was the real problem with the book, though, which was that the including was so heavy-handed. It was like he was saying, and this is what they do in the future. And maybe that's just me reading back, because I've gotten used to modern conventions of, how we pick up on the fact that something is science fiction, but it just really didn't work well for me.
Wilde was not subtle.
Yeah, it really seemed like that. One great thing about about reading this with an e-reader, though, and I did appreciate you getting us those PDFs, don't tell small beer, is that you can annotate real heavily, which is great. You really feel like annotate, just like highlighting and sharing every single line of a book like this.
Right.
Yeah.
But that explains the emails that I've been getting that just have one word. It's like flamboyant. Okay then. And so then I try to use it in a sentence everywhere I go that day. Many people seem to find this annoying. Paper or plastic? Flamboyant.
So lame, right? You want a lame bag.
Yes.
So, well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on that book.